Hello and welcome to the Scottish Poetry Library. I'm Janette Ayachi and I'm delighted to be here today with three wonderful poets to share new work and discussion around Robert Burns. I'm here in the room with Victoria McNulty and Morag Anderson, and we're joined from her COVID isolation by Susi Briggs. We've each brought new poems responding to Burns, and we'll talk about Burns in 2022. First, Victoria, would you like to share your poems?
Yeah, of course, thank you. So this first poem's called Flit. If there's ever an honest poverty, a virgin voyage in tempest sea to dig and pillage dirt, graft cane to plunder pewter, grams lashed by another shackled hand, a man's a man for all that. Well, no back broke in the plantations. No, we understand you didn't go. Although you might have longed it so, a midnight flit by a spiritous flirt with too many wains and too many decks to mention. But the ruins of that machine lie rubbled, Atlantic puddled, 2 million human skeletons high, and you were born with a choice whether to float or die. Did you hate it? Because you wore it like adventure. You wore it as solution. You wore it like your red coat with Her Majesty's Constitution. So of a pompous moontide will offer you dried blood and ski and dew. Mouths whisky vexed with excuses, slavouring how ye had to. You were in an awful muddle. So spit ye out. Sip ye fae crystal glasses, twit wit-laden musings, commit pen to paper, permit tenderness to your letters when there was none. Dishonour old scripts, this destiny knitted between crown and whip, a silence sits grit rotting at poet teeth as we gift ye names of laureate, lover, libertine, bard, but never thief. So we are complicit too. Thank you.
So powerful.
This next one's sort of untitled. I had a thought about, I was reading Burns's sort of letters to his unbegotten child, one love begotten child, and I thought, I wonder what the woman felt like. And then I thought, I remember this because, you know, I had a child to a bad boy, so I can tap into that and kind of take it from their point of view. For the first, chin grab, blood blue eyes and shining strip lights, tripping medical wires glistening. It was forever you and me. He was embarrassed to be daddy. He was young and daft. White lines to damp flats pulling him back, trapped. The grass was always greener for restless he, while we knuckled under in they wee days. Forever you and me. Duvet curled, I gazed at crumpled thee, followed all your fingerprints, watched you grow with glee. First pincer grip, babbled word and crawl, cruising couches stone and tall. I'd bawl it fae the rooftops, proud to be your ma, mum and mammy. And by Christmas we became two, no free, endless conveyors of state-sponsored meddlers. I know what they thought of we, wasters, statistics and scoundrels, wanton attention-seeking, hysterical me. But that wasn't to be, forever you and me, we scribbled out the map on the carpet of our ground floor flat, 3 bars up. We played jigsaws at our detractors, made forts for pillows, armadas out of pound shop tractors, jumping through job centre hoops, water off our backs. We brushed off the priors when they asked about daddy. We imagined a feast for the food banks and bided our time. So if I ever grapple for thee, and squeeze too tight, nag about bath time, switch on the light just to swatch your eyelashes when you're sleeping. If I still blend your veg and embarrass you when your pals are in, I'm only sorry, see, because you were the reason, and this is our church. We made it together, forever, you and me. Planned the foundation, built walls and opened doors to make a house, a hame and a family. I'm not going to, I've only got 2, but I wanted to perform a Burns piece, The Gallant Weaver, and I wanted to perform it because it's always so twee when you hear people reading it. And I read an article by an academic saying that they thought that Burns hid these radical politics in plain sight, and it was actually possibly in support of the Paisley Weavers. And at that point I was like, I'd like to play with that, how I read it, to see if it could turn the feel of the poem. Where the cat runs round to the sea, by mony a flower and spreading tree, there lives a lad for me. He is a gallant weaver. Oh, I had wooers after 9, they gave me rings and ribbons fine, and oh, I feared my heart would tine, but I gied it to the weaver. My daddy signed my tochter band, to give to the lad that had the land, but to my own heart I'll add my hand, and I gie it to the weaver. So will the birds rejoice in leafy bowers, and will bees delight in open flowers, and will the corn grows green in shimmer showers. I love my gallant weaver. Thank you.
I loved your second poem. There was so much in that. It was, I don't know if it's just hearing it as a mum and your heartstrings are just riven. It's just outstanding. That was amazing.
You think of Jenny Clow, the maid that Robert Burns got pregnant, and she was delivering the letters, the love letters between him and another one of his lovers.
Clarinda, was it?
Yeah, it was Agnes Mackelhouse, yeah. And she was married, so she decided, I can be your friend, but we're not gonna be intimate. Although he did write I Fond Kiss about her at the end, because they had this lasting kiss just before they parted, and she went off to Jamaica. But you think of what Jenny actually got in touch with Agnes and said, you're in touch with Robert Burns, please let him know that I'm pregnant with his child, I'm struggling, I'm ill, I'm on my own. And, he said it made his heart weep, and he did try to help with some coin as much as he could. But what's money, really? Because that's not what you need.
But that was...
Yeah.
But that was the baby... That was the baby that Jean Armour then brought up.
Yeah.
After.
What a woman!
Well,
was
yeah.
Jean
So
Armour.
there again is the woman left dealing with the carnage of what's left behind. Yeah. And what that baby, I think, was known as Betsy or Bessie, didn't have Robert's surname while Robert was alive. But once Robert Burns died, Jean gifted the Burns surname to, and she brought that child up with her own boys in equality in her house, which is pretty astounding.
For her, yeah. I think when you read the poem that was a response to, it's funny because I struggled with some of the Scots, so I looked it up on YouTube to make sure that I understood it, and it was men reading it, and it was quite aggressive, and I thought, there's this lovely poem to a baby that they're reading like, you call me a fornicator, and I'm like, that's not what's behind that poem. But then I thought, and so what if you love her and you're going to give her advice? I thought some women is also saddled with that and made those choices. And I always think it's hard for us to look back, especially from a feminist perspective, and sort of see what life would have been like in those times. And to hear, that child was brought up in equality, I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And that's lovely, actually.
Susie, you're a parent too, aren't you? How does it make you feel to read about how much Robert Burns was a rascal as much as he was a romantic?
Well, I've very mixed feelings because I'm very much, you should do what you please as long as you're not hurting anybody. But unfortunately, people do get hurt when you're as, a prolific lover like he was. And Wayne's get caught in the crossfire of that. But what struck me was whenever I would have conversations, particularly with guys about Robbie Burns, they'd go, oh, but he paid for all his wains. Well, that's the most basic, decent thing he could have done. That's the most, that's like the base level. We should not be giving him a gold star for that. Do you know what I mean? It was the women that were left to deal with the teething and the...
But what about the fact that it was a time before contraception? So maybe he just had a one-night stand and, that whole situation happened from that. I mean, maybe he wasn't so much as this Casanova and bouncing bard that bounced around into women's beds, but maybe he just... Yeah, really fertile.
I think he was
exactly.
probably the bouncing bard that kind of went from bed to bush to straw
bush to
bale
bush.
yeah. In a horticultural sense, Janette.
All right, okay. How about Susie? Would you like to share some poems with us just now?
I would like to. What inspired me to write in response to Rabi's work was looking at the Merry Muses, Caledonia, and I grew up with Burns, so I had never really dipped into that collection. And when I did, what I found as a grown woman was some of it was quite shocking. And the first one that struck me was the yellow Yorlin, and I'm going to sing it to the melody that it's sung in. It's usually sung quite jolly as well, which is really incongruent to how I see its meaning. And to me, it's a rape fantasy. So apologies, there is a trigger warning with this. And I've called it My Yellow Yorlin. And I will be singing it. My Yellow Yorlin. The strange man says, "Is your maiden heed? Yen lately a terrifying morning. I could pie you wheel and mock you squeal. You let me touch your yellow Yorlin. What should I do? What could I say? My heart's silly for fucking. He has the hawk and I'm his prey. How do I save my yellow Yorlin? I could feign the musk o' another man's lust. Tell this bastard that I've got a darling, or tuck his cellar and pretend that I do consent to the stealing o' my yellow Yorlin. Oh, in vain he kens I'm a lane, his lust is our pouring. Down on the grun my skirt's upturned, and he's clawing for my yellow Yorlin. Time stopped still, it was my will, nae affecting and nae squealing. The sun it shone on this fine May morn, my body it lay there frozen. I stayed still there, singing and said, the pain I kept it hidden. If he thought me tame, I'd maybe get hame to see another May morning. And he'll be convinced by his conscience when it comes a calling. My stillness was my acquiescence to the gifting of my yellow Yorlin. Oh, beauty's a curse, and at its worst comes with predatory warnings. Oh, men we swell, we entitled pride to hunt and stab the yellow Yorlin. I just felt she needed a voice, the woman in the poem.
She's been heard.
You've given me goosebumps, Susie. That's just
You've made me
set
want
my
to go
flesh.
out and smack people in the face.
Well, yeah, and I'm sorry if it's a painful one to hear.
No, not at all.
No, it needs to be heard. It's perfect.
Okay, I'll give you something a little bit lighter now.
Bring us back up, Susie.
In fact, I'll go up another shade actually. It's not so light, but then I'll leave it with a lighter one. So again, still in the Merry Muses collection, and one of my favourite pubs is the Coach and Horses in Dumfries, and I sing in there with my band quite often. And I was asking the landlady, was there any stories attached to or about Robert Burns attached to the building? And he lived round the corner for a while with Jean, and when he was an excise man. And Muirland Meg is a song that is attributed to the place. And I thought, who was Muirland Meg? What's her story? And I went down a rabbit hole researching, because upstairs in that building it was a brothel. So, and in the song Muirland Meg, it mentions that she's 13, and it shocked me. And I thought, she has been groomed into this business. And when I did the research, it kind of became more and more apparent what her story was likely to be. So this is Atween the Lines of Muirland Meg. Her floor was sold when she was only 13 and broken for coins she would never have seen. Tied to the bodhouse and yet imprisoned by debt. Meg's cage lies open, but she can't flee yet. Men lust and sing after this bonny new bird. She teases them well and she kens the right words. When you're fear to the prison, it's easy to please. And debt to the bodhouse keeps you down on your knees. And it wouldn't matter the dark she put in. The bodhouse manny is coin in a tin. Her body is property. He keeps renting it out. And all Meg'll get is a manky sheep's clout. 200 year on, they still sing along. For a sheep's clout she'll do it and do it till morn. I'll sing your worth, Meg, atween all the lines. You were a bairn, a woman, a goddess divine. Okay, I've done those two pieces. Now here's my third, and it's a lot lighter. You'll be glad to hear. When I was looking for inspiration for this project, I found that the poems that I really loved of Burns didn't actually inspire me to write anything other than I like that. So I went looking more about him, and as you go looking for more about him, you end up doing rabbit holes with stories about his exes. And there was one about an ex called Tibby, that he wrote a 10-verse poem for Tibby called "Oh Tibby, I hae seen the day." And in it, he's just constantly saying how he doesn't care. And at one point he says that she's too haughty, that she's a queen, that she doesn't care about him because she's got money and she looks down her nose at him. And also he brags on that he's got another woman in the poem. And I'm just thinking, hang on a minute.
Fight and talk.
Decided that Tibby needs a reply, and I've kept it in the same kind of rhythm and rhyme as how he wrote his. It wasn't even that much of a good poem compared to his other ones, but it just seemed like a bit of a rant. So here we go. This is "O Rabbi, I hae seen the day. O Rabbi, I hae seen the day you would hae me sigh, wi' words laced wi' promised love, but truth I carena buy. Aye, I saw you on the moor. I get it you knew, no 'cause you're poor. You treated me like one of your whores, and I cannae toll the lies. I come hame on Sunday last. By then glamour's spell became cast, severing ties of tender past, and truth, o' that care I. I doubtna, man, that you mun think you lost your charm for I hae clink, but it's no for gau that I shrink my love for it to die. Poor hurt Rabbi, greeting in the dark. I pity that lass doon at John Park. I'll wan tuck her in the sark, and truth I caretna buy. Blame me, Rabbi, for haeing gear, garnin screeve, o love nae mair, 10 whole verses to say you dinna care. I'll wager that's a lie. Your pride's been daunted, no you're hurt. For me, a lassie chose another airt. I wan play wounded in the dirt. Utter your reasons as to why. It's no the money that mucks me mean. It's the flirting you do on the scene. And so what if I decide I am the queen and look sae proud and high?
Oh.
Yeah. You embodied
Fantastic.
her. That was beautiful.
Thank you. I enjoyed it, and that was the easiest one to write.
Susie, that was incredible. Thank you so much for that. What do we think, though, in the way that Burns is still perceived today in today's culture and still toasted to and celebrated, and how much of a cultural phenomena he is, despite the way that he did treat women at that time? What do you think about that?
Well, I think we need to take the glamour away from how we perceive Burns I'm not saying we should completely cancel it or anything like that. I think we need to look at it, warts and all, and look at that time in history as well, and stop ignoring it. And what Liz Lockhead did, and it was in regards to a letter he'd sent a friend about a thundering skillade and throwing Jean into the dirt when she was pregnant with twins. It's quite a serious letter and a serious implications from that, because I think she went on to lose those twins, which is awful. We need to have conversations about rape culture, and what Liz Lockhead had said in the past has actually made me more perceptive to what that is in our poetry, in our songs, in our folk history, you know, of how women are perceived by men. And you know, this hasn't changed. I mean, I was in an establishment not that long ago, and the barman said to me, "What we need behind this bar is it's an arse, so that the lads can look at it." And that's
bar culture.
that struck me. And at the time I was writing the Yellow Yorlin, at the time I was writing Muir and Meg, I was writing the responses to that. And it just struck me, nothing has really changed. We need to keep having these conversations, and we shouldn't be afraid to speak out about those things.
We shouldn't be afraid, and I think what you've highlighted in your poem, Susie, is that we are all still singing these songs and celebrating him in ignorance. And that...
It's a chosen ignorance though, isn't it? Yeah. So I was quite interested, Susie, you were talking about the Yellow Yorlin and the way that that's sung with a jollity, with a, you know, let's all have a great old sing-song. Corinne Polwart has a great podcast talking about the jolly tone in which a lot of border ballads are sung. And when you actually look at the content of the lyrics, they're all along the same vein. And it's not to cancel out what's gone before, but it's about changing the way that we look at them, and rather than celebrating them, maybe nodding to the fact that it was part of, you know, the mid 1800s, yeah. which is not the case now. So we can change it, give a nod to it, but expect it to be different going on from here, I would hope.
We can't blame a person, we blame the society.
Well, yeah, I think what's interesting really about Burns is not actually, because he exists as a person. Of all the luminous things that people are, they're contradictions in terms. Everyone is of a time frame, but what's really interesting is how Scotland has held him as this thing, which he was loads of other things as well. I was really moved by Ken Curry's kind of painting in the Burns Museum about the Atlantic slave trade, and how we completely brush that under the carpet as well when we're talking about Burns and his life choices. So what we're talking about is actually a country who chooses to ignore misogyny within its bar, that chooses to ignore racism and ties to slavery. Burns was a man of his time, but what are we now if we don't have these discussions? And that's kind of where I'm at with it. If to say that a lot of people maybe find Burns not that relevant in things, he's completely relevant because we haven't actually moved on. We still have issues with misogyny amongst upper ranks, amongst all Scottish society actually. We're still very conservative, as much as also very liberal and other. It's a mirror, I think, and we focus too much on him. There's not as much we should be focusing on how we react to it.
Morag, have you got some poetry for us to lift us up away from this very intense discussion that we're having about a man from a very long time ago who still continues to thrive today?
Well, it is quite funny because I've written 3, and I decided to, when I was researching Burns, I decided to look more at the man rather than the poetry. So I was saying to you before that, you know, I've piped at Burns suppers in the past, I've addressed the haggis, normally a male's
You're a female
job.
Burns today then, right?
But reading his work and reading more his biographies and the history of the man was really quite appalling. And I found it very difficult to separate the two. So I've written 3 poems in the voices of 3 of the females that featured in his life and in his poetry. The first one is Agnes Wilson, who was stanged by Adam Armour being Jean Armour's younger brother, 15-year-old brother, who with some friends decided to punish this this servant in Pussy Nancy's pub for being whatever it was they decided that she was. The unheard testimony of Agnes Wilson. When the last of the drinkers sink into waxen skin, adrift like sea-wrecked timber, and tinkers leave the tavern to sing in darker corners, you smoor the fire, bank heat for travellers asleep in rented cots, swing open the door to empty the night's slops from a tin pail. Grappling hands clamp your mouth, yank fistfuls of hair from your scalp, tear your apron, rip through linens to the stained scraps of your underskirt. Young voices skid like stones on ice, break without forecast, the first kick from a boot, the second a shod hoof. Forced astride a knotted trunk, lashed to the flanks of restive horses, you are driven past the kirkyard's towering ash to the southern edge of the village. Left to repent, naked, by the trickle of Cessnock water, the raw rage between your legs subdues the ripening bruises on your back. Lads of the old licht, she has always lamented nights spent serving foul ale and stale flesh to your fathers. Not quite so upbeat.
No, foul ale and stale flesh. Yeah, that will stay with me for some time.
So that was poor old Agnes Wilson getting a voice at long last. My second Burns female is Mary Campbell, otherwise known as Highland Mary. When Jean Armour was pregnant and removed to Paisley to stay with family, Burns was so upset, so gutted, that within a handful of days he shacked up with Mary instead and made plans to go to Jamaica.
I heard that sarcasm early on.
From Greenock on the Nancy. He didn't turn up, and poor Mary Campbell died there of typhus a month later. So this is for Mary. The full tenderness of parting. Bleak Greenock morning skulks the empty dock. Herringbone sky billows like the Nancy's sails. Magpie on the windowsill holds light hostage, comes to watch my lungs drown. Breath stumbles barefoot through the stubble field of my breast. Chill October shawls my collar, carves my joints like the river coil snaking Manach Mill. In the Trysting Thorns' fragrant shade, my love deflowered a harebell, crushed plum petals between finger and thumb, scented my hollows with adder grey water. The mite who pricked my skin with Bible verses, set flesh to flame with lingering pledges, leaves me here to moulder in silent dust. My last one is a response to Jean Armour, his wife. And I got fed up regarding her as a victim and thinking, what the hell was she doing, clinging on to that? So I decided I wanted to look at it differently and think perhaps she made that choice because she was absolutely mad for him, for whatever reasons. So this is Jean lusting for Robert. Hunger for a fruited thorn, as though thumbing plump fruit for ripeness, you palm me this way and that. Words unlace restraint. I walk the tightrope of lust, taste the pale froth of short-lived bliss. Our trysting hour quickened by morning's first blush, I urge fresh heat upon you. My cheeks flush outbids the sun as I steal a path home through birdsong. Night after night you rub against rock, shed old skin for the pink of new. Deceit falls from your lips like seeds from a blackbird's beak. And still, I want you. Thank you.
I love how the birds outside actually joined in the chorus there.
Came
They
to
were
sing
like,
along.
yeah, we always sing when people have sex. That was amazing, Morag. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'd like to read some of my own poetry in response to Robert Burns. This first one I'm going to read is a poem I wrote, and it's called Robert Burns in Scottish Stanza. Pretty straightforward. But I looked into the form that he was using when he was writing poetry, and he used this, it's now called the Scottish stanza or standard habby, because it was actually originally first used in the 1600s by a poet called Robert Semple, who wrote a poem about this local piper that lived in a small village outside of Paisley, and his name was Hab Simpson. And after he died, he was immortalised in this poem, and he was known by everyone, and a lot like Robert Burns. And I think this is probably, you know, I think Burns was a bit of a visionary, and I think he could foresee a lot of things. And I think there was something in him that wanted to be a repetition of who Hab Simpson was in this small town. And being the local piper, as you would probably know, Morag, knew everyone, was there at funerals, weddings, celebrations, christenings, whatever it was, the piper was there, and he would hear all the stories, and he would be telling all those stories in the butcher shop in the morning. He was also a butcher, which is also quite interesting, but it was just completely part of the community. And when he died, people were lost. There was actually a line in the poem by Robert Semple that was like, what Remead Hab Simpson's deed, you know, no one can replace him. And I think there was something in Burns that looked back and was like, okay, this is interesting. I kind of want to be like him. I'm almost like him. And I think I will be immortalised forever onwards if I continue this pattern of knowing the community and knowing how to be a voice for people, for the people. And so Scottish stanza. A diet of women, wine and song. What could possibly go so wrong? This is the place where I belong, and I love it. It bulks me up and makes me strong, fuels me with grit. I speak in stardust, incantations. I dress in silk and silky skins, and I confess all my near sins to the whole world. Where I end and where I begin is one big swirl. Baritone of my bones sing heavy beneath the belly of my bevy. I reach for life that feels fleshy so I can sleep. Legend and myth, just like Nessie, into the deep. With romance, friendship, food and drink, one is always allowed to think. Most things to music we can link, words to lyric. This is how we stop the near sink. It's generic. From couch to ceilidh, up you get, no rest from the worker's sore head. It won't be long before we're dead. Let's celebrate with throats open wide to be fed, if that's our fate. My role, I speak for my people. Escape societal shackle. Make folk laugh, bellow and cackle. Like the stars say, I'm Aquarius, I mingle in lots of ways. Most mornings I work the farmland. It's my duty to give a hand, but my health is taken like quicksand. The elements rake their toll against all I planned in settlement. I am restrained from who I love, so breed as wide as a turtle dove. Migrating to fields from above, I know these roads, journeys that give the words a shove. like breath they flow. Hemlock, porcelain, and then smash. I weary myself back from crash. Marry my love under lightning flash. Father unleashed, allowed now to follow my stash for all such peace. Kids and animals catch my heart. I've always known this from the start. Losing my daughter, the worst mark death has ingrained. After this, stop the morning lark. I live in pain. Seasons come fierce, I watch from my room, try not to let myself hug gloom. My tooth is removed, more ache looms, so much is lost. I crawl to my horse, left ungroomed, dip into frost. I trust my friend, dear physician, wide cabinet of medicines, each one a trick from the magician, ripe sorcery, to sip with my broth of venison, soon I'll be free. I drink from the well, dip into the sea, but want to stay in bed with whiskey. The delirium knocks my family, and to the still. Too late now for my recovery, I've had my fill. Chronic illness and infection, my heart's walls go up in correction. The water too cold to section, any more time here. Live fast, die young, a quick reflection, nothing to fear. I've left my brood, my legacy, many women mourning after me. It's no wonder I'm not left in peace, long after wrought, to unravel any mystery, least not forgot. I live on, I play in the souls of many where heather grows, and beyond as life does unfold, each year I'm sung. On my birthday, I rise and roll, kiss winter sun. And in Burns fashion, I'll take a little swig of whiskey. Yeah, so that was about his life. This poem is called The Night Robert Burns's Skull Went for a Walk. And I think, like all of our poetry today, it's based on historical and literary fact. And for where the places where women don't have voices, we're filling in for that. And I think that if anyone can, we are the women that can. So after Burns was dead, the phenomena continued, and people were still fascinated by the fact that he was gone, and yet he still lived on, and they wanted to know why. So there was a certain group of scientists called phrenologists who, it wasn't until after Jean Armour died, because she wouldn't let anyone touch his grave, that he was allowed to be dug up from the long dead and have his skull examined. And yes, I'm fascinated by death and dying and things like that. So this for me was really interesting. So I imagined what it would be like that night that the phrenologists and the spiritualists and the workmen dug up his body. The night Robert Burns's skull went for a walk. The moon that night escaped the pages of Macbeth to nestle in the margin of a sky where birds drummed instead of sang, and the kirkyard clock summoned midnight with a holy gong. A phrenologist, spiritualist, Victorian scientist, surgeon, and 2 workmen swaddled together to exhume the body of Robert Burns and raise him from the long dead. A dank black stone of the muddy underworld coughed out his skeleton as the lantern wobbled and ladder shook. In one fell swoop, they dismembered his head. 40 years after his death, all that was left was dust, where flesh once slept and accepted kisses. The heart dissolved and gone, living on elsewhere, like Bruce, whose silver-wrapped aortic chambers were tossed into the melee of battle immortalized. The heroic spleen and eyeball bereft, no gore like before, each organ a delicacy of fat for the worm's sword, just wrought and parched bones now, aching to be used as weapons. From the pauper's grave to the mausoleum, with pillars and marble figures erected at the plough, his wife now buried too, people still unable to forget him. The bard could hardly be left in peace. Violent admiration is akin to love after all. They fumbled away from tomb towards the plasterer's shop on Queensbury Street, swinging the skull in a linen sack, the light carrying the creak of the casket, a fondled mandible. Each man tried their hat on the thing in turn, like the glass ossified fairy tale slipper. Who will be the fairest fit on this enlarged occipital lobe, which shows his love for animals and children, said the phrenologist, and the scientist kept the Paris cast for behind glass of an always lit university corridor. And the spiritualist held a seance and spoke in tongues, and the plasterer waved, heaved, and whistled, and the workman shared a cheese and apple sandwich. But Burns's hollow orbital sockets were as fierce as Fingal's cave, watching back in amusement, his spine patiently waiting through the nocturne, humming a tune for its reunion. I love the morbidity of it all. There's part of me, as a poet and as a bit of a Lothario myself, that empathises with Burns, because I feel that there's something dramatic and there's something intense and there's something that just kind of rattles the senses in dealing with desire and not just dealing with conjugal love and domesticity. Domesticity, in my eyes, kills desire. And I'm not saying that I agree with the way that he treated women, but I do understand what it's like, especially as a performance poet, which is really what he was, jumping from bar to bar and telling tales and racy stories and entertaining people and having a few drinks and meeting strangers that then become lovers. And I think there's part of that for me is inspirational and part of who I am. And so there's a way sometimes that I feel a bit sorry for him when he is counter-stabbed for the way that he treated women in a way that most men at that time did treat women. I'm not saying that we should celebrate it so much as we do now, but I'm a woman who loves women. So I am coming from an angle where I know what it's like maybe to be a bit of a rascal as well, as a romantic, and pour that back in. You guys are huffing and puffing in each ear, so I know you have terrible things to say.
Pawing at the ground.
I know, but no. But
No, it's just twice you've used the word rascal, and when we first gathered, I asked.
Rogue. How about rogue?
I asked if it would be okay to use the word bastard, thinking that was going to be bad, but actually I'm building up so many other things I could be saying. Robbie Burns. I have an odd relationship with him because I don't really have that much of a relationship with him. Why is that? Dyed in the wool Scottish way back as far as I can trace my family tree to. But my parents were Hebrideans, and Gaelic was our first language. And to be honest, Scots was regarded as slang. So if we went home as kids, my siblings and I, and we spoke any Scots that we'd picked up from friends at school or playing out in the streets, we'd get a smack. We'd be told off, that
a smack for speaking Scots.
Yeah,
there's poetry in that.
You weren't. That was not allowed. And also, my Hebridean parents being strictly Catholic, and my siblings and I were brought up as such. Robbie Burns was regarded as salach. Salach means filthy, dirty.
Really?
So really, he wasn't somebody that was respected. So it's not that he wasn't respected. He just really wasn't talked about. He wasn't a feature in my upbringing. Books really weren't much of a feature in my upbringing, you know, as was probably true of most Glasgow Hebridean households. Money wasn't plentiful. So I did spend a lot of time in libraries, but whenever I looked at Rabbie Burns's books, it really was just like tartan and shortbread, and I couldn't relate to any of it at all. The language was new to me. So this project has allowed me to sort of pick the bones of him apart, and I find it too hard to separate the man from the poetry. And that's not to say that he doesn't have a place, or to look. It's unfair to look with a 21st century eye at his behaviours then.
Yeah. I mean, it's lad culture today, really, which.
But it's about making sure that we don't continue to celebrate it. You can acknowledge its presence, you can discuss it, but it shouldn't be something that we're continuing to sing bawdy sort of jolly tales about.
But what about polyamory? I mean,
I have no issue with that. That's fine, as long as Susi said earlier, as long as nobody's being hurt in the process. What you choose to do is what you choose to do.
He
but
left a lot of crying women in his wake, didn't he? He was deceitful. He wasn't honest and truthful. He was a narcissist.
Yeah.
100%.
Do you know, I think you said something quite interesting when you talked about him being a performance poet. And I think the word performance is really key there. I'm a performance poet, and I don't perform as myself. I don't write as myself. There's a lot of things I say in my poetry that I don't believe. Okay. I'm taking on roles to elicit responses from people.
So you're an actress as well?
It's such a big part of what you do. So if that's what he was doing, I sometimes think actually really...
Maybe it wasn't him.
Maybe he wants to be seen as a rogue. Maybe it's that he's added, because people, as you say, they love lust, they love all, it's part of the, he would have known the audience that would have been hearing him as part of the drama.
Yeah, part of the drama.
And I just, because I'm the same as yourself, but it's funny because Burns wasn't really a big part of her household, but my mum always threw in the deals of war with the excisemen. I still don't know what it means. Don't know why she said it, but it was always part of a joke she'd say when you were annoying her. Just to kind of, but it was never, we didn't celebrate them or read them or anything. If anything, and I'm still on a journey with Scots language, but this is why I enjoyed this so much. But it was maybe Matt McGinn and Billy Connolly in our house where you were hearing that kind of stuff. But what I do realise is they owe a lot to Burns as well, because he comes from that performance kind of cabaret era too. So I don't know how to say it without being too crude. Yeah, he was all these, but he's also dead. Right, so it's like, how do we take the best bits and make it meaningful? Yeah. And that's what I find interesting about it, because a lot of it is meaningful.
But I grew up in a world where Scots was seen as slang, even though we were not discouraged at school, because our Hedy at the time, he was like the president of the Robert Burns World Federation. So we were spoon-fed Burns right from age like primary 3 right to primary 7 for the school I went to. And, I learned how to play Eubanks and Breeze and the penny whistle, performed it at every Burns supper when I was a child. I grew up with him, and, I never understood, because, Scots literacy it's still needing to be pushed forward, Scots literacy, because we were taught to read and write in English. So every January you'd get a Burns poem to recite, and it would be chosen for you. So you weren't even allowed to choose one that actually spoke to you. So you'd get the Twa Dugs or whatever, and you'd have to learn it off by heart. And your mum wouldn't ken what some of the words mean, and so I felt I was a wee bit soulless, and I think that could be done a lot better. I think children should be allowed to pick their Scots poetry, and it doesn't have to be Burns. I think they should be allowed to explore it, pick something and recite it themselves, and it shouldn't be a competition either. It's always the same wins that win it. It should not be a competition. We've got new Scots as well, and they should be celebrating them and the way they speak, because it's important. I think it's really, really important. But in terms of being a poet now, I love writing in Scots. It's just how I feel I can get the most expression from my heart to the paper. and to the audience, it's just my choice. And I want to ease up the Scots language so that it becomes normalised and not just seen as a couthy wee tea towel thing.
That was amazing. Thank you so much, ladies. I've been left with so much to think about now. Robert Burns isn't really who I think he was, or any of us thought he was. So I'm going to finish with a poem. This is a love letter for one of Robert Burns's women. He did have many, but this one was Agnes McHalehouse. McHalehouse? Is that how? I feel like you're from the Highlands. You know how to say, pronounce it properly. I'm just a Edinburgh.
I think it was
Macalose. Macalose. There you go.
I could be wrong.
No, I go with you. So this is a love letter from Agnes. My Sylvanda, I am your Clorinda. We are born to be star-crossed lovers. A blessing, no less perhaps, that despite not meeting more than a few times, your years of letters have scored life for me in words. Sent me under a spell, powerful enough to pull me away from visions of everyday decorum and mundane hell. You, my love, have shown me only heaven's fine tune. For the poet in you speaks to the poetess in me. But friendship is all I can offer thee, because of course I am married. While I live, my fondest attention will be my children's. That night you came for me at tea in Potterrow, that warm December, just before you fell off your horse, silly, and had to swallow laudanum for weeks, and were confined to your room for almost 2 months. As I awaited your visit, I looked out from the tenement to an island below, untouched and lit up for the lovers, with mornings that dwindled into dawn and enveloped each other as naked as winter trees. Indoors, the tablecloth was a thin veil between worlds. Time undressed as it waited, harboured a melancholy yearning, soaked in the soudade for those who once sat, but resolute in its stitch of return, of capture, an altar for the living and dead ensemble, for the lost and found, presence and absence, the feast and famine, the meaty claws of the broken heart. I scold my fingertips on the turrets as rock formations under the castle take on otherwise hidden curves in the light, trying on sun rays and haar like funeral dresses in a full-length mirror. The sun here has shot running men. It is molten nickel. For the servant you seduced that passed our notes between us, were you so unable to hold back your lascivious ways as this morning I woke at first light and my first thoughts were of you? I will regain full composure in the distance between us. As the months heat up, I'll set myself to simmer. An aerial view leaves absences of the body. I watch down from the bedroom window. You sleep as the river runs under you. Ideas come as the electricity of summer storms continues to ignite. We didn't stop talking for days. It's in the quiet that understands echo, the heart and the heat, radiation of intimacy, devotion. The moonlight on metal right now is a terrific silk. Though I sit still, I cannot sit still long. What sustains the creative spirit? A beating heart, a restless mind, and a wandering soul. I have this love-drunk obsession with fertile solitude, love and loneliness, these tombstone elegies, the intoxications and the hang-ups and hangovers thereafter, the height of being high, the moments of being. It is only society that forces inner conflict. Here at home, my happiness seems less artificial, less programmed. I am taken more by surprise and uncertainty, taken into dark, sexy rooms. The last thing I need is a legion of counsel offering me options to solve or perceive my predicaments. I just want to hear my own voice, untainted. I am part of the source, and so I am part of the solution, a cure excavated from the poison you see. You must think me dramatic, but I am yours, you say, and I practice unpeeling the barbed wire to let down the grand drawbridge. Enter, my king, unmount your horse. You must be weary from your travels and your galloping mind. Bow down to kiss my hand. Follow me into my earthly chamber. My imaginings could drive me to delirium, yet I have mastered the art of waiting. And I wait for you with ease and splendid company, with faith. I believe in you and all of your visions. My beautiful owl, hunter of my heart, able to see in the dark, a creature that makes no sound as it steadies over its prey, a bird of the sharpest talons and widest eyes. The amethyst sunset of Edinburgh matches your glow when you tell a racy story or sing a rattling song at a ball. Look at what we have accomplished so far, the deep levels of unconditional love and expanding consciousness we have reached and shared together, the safeguarding of trust that has bloomed, exciting, endless open pockets of desire, the deep growth and understanding, the ability to listen, to ground, to love without caution, to dance without friction, to sing and howl, to commune with the spirits, to dream bigger, live harder, to commit and harness compassion and put someone else's ethical feelings before our own egoic qualms. This is only the beginning of our capabilities as humans to bask in the passion of pleasure, pureness and bliss that we deserve and do create on a path together. But what real future with you when you are a hawk out hunting the next carnal fix for greener pastures, building dollhouses where out of miniature doors maids stretch before me, begging me to ask you for help. I'm glad you listened to me about giving her coin. Now she is pregnant. I know her story makes your heart weep. I'm not sure where I stand with you. You say you love me, but you hold me along with all these other women, and it feels toxic to me. And that's what pathologicals do. They manufacture rivalry, jealousy via third parties in order to feel sought after and in demand. At the same time, making you feel you need to change something or try harder to win their affection. Oh, I'm barely resisting anything but hedonistic slouch today. You are my weakness, and yet so much of my strength. Your voice, your touch, my heart accelerated. Latch onto me a little longer, those glacial eyes exploring. But I cannot absorb responsibility for your behavior. I need to be with someone that has eyes only for me and make sure I know that with truth and transparency, with real, regal, higher one love and respect. Is it collective arousal somehow, your animal urges to fornicate upon desire, a sensation initially spawned in me by you and transferred back through again? I hold my chastity belt high instead of a bloody flag in ceremony, and you find another vessel to ride for pleasure. If your path is elsewhere, how can I ever stop that? Please be honest with me. I don't want to be that cake and eat it. I don't want to be the main dish, but with lots of side courses so you fill up on them until you are intensely lit on all these slyly spiced experiences, and then you leave no room for the grand serving when we finally have some time together. No, you said. Lies. Yes, you did. You collect whenever you want to try and build something behind my back and in a takeaway fashion. And if the food gets cold, I'm always here for you, constantly piping hot, wrapped in lace. If I am the biggest attraction, why do you go sightseeing in the sexual suburbs, bringing back souvenirs? I understand that you just want to be free, and conjugal love to you is not the language of poesy, but what is it that you trample in the hearts of others on that odyssey? Who really are you when your actions don't meet your words. Javelins, spears, flamethrowers, shrapnel, bladed chains, and a circle of knives. My rage is processing this deep betrayal. I cut the cord between us for eternity. Yet what a shame, shaman, with the way you forge language, a rare jewel. I will miss your words and so speak, but it was a snake's tongue at times, and it poisoned quickly, so I will never return for another bite. I cut it to the flames. I have learnt all my lessons here. Everything I loved in you, I loved in myself. If I don't forgive you, I don't forgive myself. Women have that homing instinct, you see, to want domesticity more. All men want to do is fuck their faces off like big wailing walruses. How do husbands cheat and wives cheat? Are they not essentially cheating themselves out of divinity? Who is judged on their last day? How can one continuously cuckold another that they care about? It must be the cruelest, most selfish thing on this planet. What webs we humans weave, I am slowly learning. You are blind to the dead weight in these women that coagulates the blood as months and years of unresolved and open-wounded energies will do more harm than pleasure, for sure. I am so much more than a pawn in the lineup, a stale side piece, passion on tap. I am not a mistress, I am goddess energy. Yet my recent physical weakness was most likely born from the suffering I felt from your passive-aggressive avoidance and confusion after contact with her and the me overlapping, getting entrapped in your head again, waiting longer to face me after and keeping me waiting in the dark, questioning until my head was full. Oh, but I felt it for days and I cried in the garden. But I've been blessed with more than you know in knowing you. The love will always be there, but I can control it. I no longer want to be a gullible lady friend. You are not a thorn in me anymore. Despite what we shared being otherworldly, the highs and lows of this passion are too intense for me. And I do believe you have strong narcissistic tendencies and were controlling me. I need to let go of a partnership that I overgiven, even though it feels like the strongest love ever lived and lit up on magical embers. This is my ultimate karmic lesson here, to douse the fuse finally this time. We are more in compound than our karma. I am heartbroken about it, but the amount of energy I've expended over this is more than I have to be willing to expose anymore. I'm sorry, I've seen something in your behavior that doesn't quite work on my timeline at all. I've worked too hard to get where I am and not to be deflated by the emotional and manipulative tactics of some attention-seeking man who can't face any criticism. I'm going to feel devalued for the last time. I embrace this energy of a life's silence. As you sit and write 3 hours over a bottle, those mischief-making demons you speak of, disrupting your peace but never tainting your honour. Such instant gratification does not do well for me. All our language is spent, and all that is left is eye-fond kiss. I try to forget the feeling and meaning of your lips. How every other after you seemed bland. I wish there were fewer unmentionables in between. More times we let love reign over the Hierophant's stare. When they toasted the bard, let's toast the women too. Who is to claim our impromptu need to connect and unite as human beings? We all have the versatility of the magician. We can all flip at any minute, from romance to sterility, warm yoke to snipped circuit. Nothing lasts. You know, I have this desire for the combustibles, and what inward flame nestled behind those eyes, the bird of prey on the lookout for breast to breast to breast. but you do not know how well I can handle explosives. It is late now. Into the tail arms of Morpheus I fall. Our love will live on in the hearts of many. You've been the most beautiful worship.